Thank you, David. And by the way, good luck with that March Madness thing. I hear it's a really big deal. And by the way, it is a very big deal and very appropriate for this time of year. And as we discuss cross-platform measurement, just to give you a little bit of a tidbit from an ESPN perspective, we launched our Tournament Challenge app this past weekend, where it quickly rose to be the #2 app in all of iTunes, averaging 8,100 entries per second, which is really incredibly remarkable. So if I start to bore you during this presentation, feel free to fill out your brackets. We only have a little bit of time left. I only have about 15 minutes, so this is going to be more of an interstitial public service announcement about a topic and initiative that we at ESPN, I specifically, talk about a lot. Brad talked about it today. It was talked about on the panel just before me. But we still lack tangible progress. And this is particularly about cross-platform measurement, and specifically about cross-platform content measurement. I would bet that most, if not all of you, already this morning at about 10 o'clock in the morning have already consumed media content on multiple platforms today. And yet we would have no way of knowing what that impact is, when you did it, why you did it, what was the content, was the content similar? Was there any sort of, pro-cigarist activity going on? And yet it's the way that we live today, it's the new normal, and it continues to go unmeasured. Sure, we know how many people went online, were using their tablets, perhaps using a mobile device, checked a certain app like Tournament Challenge, but we don't know what the cumulative effect of all that activity is. So it's measured to some degree, but it's incompletely measured, to be a little bit more accurate. Now, 3 years ago, 2010 at AM 5.0, I spoke about ESPN's view on this topic and our vision for cross-platform research going forward. The title of my talk was the Cross-Measurement Marathon, for obvious reasons. ESPN started this marathon back in 2001, and we're still running. We're exhausted, but we're running. ESPN had a lot at stake then, but even more at stake today. In fact, the industry had a lot at stake then, but even more at stake now. You heard a lot of the issues on the panel today. And to give you an idea, it was interesting to hear Brad talk about learnings from television in terms of reach and frequency, which was very, very refreshing. The problem is we're not treating this issue with the sense of urgency that I think we should, particularly after all this time. Perhaps it's because ESPN has a little bit more at stake, given that our business is uniquely penetrated over 5 media platforms and more platforms happening every year. This includes display, it includes video content, and even includes audio content, very big in the radio business, and digital audio. Yes, it's expensive. As Alan Wurtzel always says, it's very hard to do, but the longer we wait, the less that we know, the more knowledge gaps that we have about how Americans spend over 11 hours of their day each and every day. Now, over the course of ESPN's cross-measurement marathon, we learned a lot about multi-platform behavior. And this resulted in a set of proven empirical generalizations that my team ultimately published back in 2010, known as the 7 Principles of Cross-Media. Now, one of the most prominent principles is that media use is not zero-sum, which is an assumption that we made many, many years ago. For example, that for the internet to grow, it would have to come at the expense of audience for television, which is still not the case. This chart, based on the most recent measures from GfK in fall of 2012, their multimedia mentor product, shows how media use grows exponentially as more platforms are used. In fact, the weekly hours spent with television in the United States are not cannibalized when more hours are spent with additional media throughout the week. All of that other media use is actually incremental to TV. In fact, the most time with TV is actually spent with those that use the most other media. We say that a heavy user is a heavy user. If you're a heavy user of one medium, you tend to be a heavy user of all media. Now, ESPN embraced this principle nearly a decade ago and used this insight as the basis for a strategy, and it's a mission statement that every employee carries around to serve sports fans anytime, anywhere. Now, to measure ESPN's performance as a result of this strategy, we created a biennial study called ESPN All Day, Every Day, with a company called Knowledge Networks. It was actually Gail Metzger's idea back at SRI when he came to me with this idea. And now, of course, Knowledge Networks is owned by GfK. Every spring and fall, we monitor the number of users and usage across ESPN platforms and the overlap of users and usage across the platforms. Now, this chart shows the trend of ESPN weekly media users from 2004 through 2012. One note, 2011 is missing because we had a methodological adjustment and we had to bypass that wave. But during this period of time, ESPN's net weekly reach increased 16% to 113 million users in the average week. Multi-platform users more than doubled from that, over that period of time from 2004 to 2012, from roughly 24 million to almost 54 million. And we've learned over this period of time that the multi-platform users are the heaviest users of all of our media. So in a way, multi-platform usage actually creates a rising tide that floats all boats. Now, this is great data for tracking overall growth and giving us kind of a broad view of behavioral changes. But what we still lack is granular, ongoing measures that tell us how our touch points are being used throughout the day on a program and an event level. We know very little about things like concurrent usage between media or how our touch points interact to either increase audience reach or frequency of usage over an interval like a campaign, and how this might vary by target. We still have lots of questions. So in 2010, we decided to elevate our focus and investment in cross-platform research at ESPN under the brand ESPN XP. And we had three fundamental goals. One is to move cross-platform research from special project to standard practice, not just for ESPN, but for the industry. We simply can't do this alone. Number two is to inform media plans with more predictive measures and consumer insights. The models used today are essentially broken because they don't have the right input data. We don't have good measures of duplication across platforms. And then finally, to establish a link from the cross-platform measures to existing media currencies and ad performance research. In other words, the ability to plan more effectively, but then execute that plan, and then finally measure results. The fact is today, we actually do a lot of work. My team does a lot of work to measure sort of the effect of cross-measurement, of cross-platform campaigns, but we don't really know the cause. We're missing the most fundamental thing, and that is the level of exposure and the cumulative effect of that exposure. Now, the model for ESPN XP involves triangulating the cross-platform measurement issues to include three things. First is the best measures of users and usage by platform, which is the top of the pyramid here. We're still working on that, but we're getting closer. Mobile is still a big issue. It's incompletely measured. We have some knowledge gaps, but we're in better shape today than we were before, so it's time to move on. Second is measuring cross-media audiences, including multi-platform users and usage, incremental lift and duplication across platforms. And then finally, measuring ad performance across those platforms, including things like isolating context effect, platform effect, and then ultimately, what is the cross-platform effect on an integrated media campaign? So in 2010, right here at Rethink, we announced our first pilot project involving 15 different vendors to measure multi-platform usage and ad effects during the 2010 FIFA World Cup, ESPN's coverage. Most of that coverage was going to occur during the day since the event took place in South Africa. And it would be the first time that cross-platform usage of a specific event was measured on a national scale. It was a huge and expensive undertaking, but an equally huge success from a research perspective. We learned, for example, that World Cup reached 160 million people in total, delivered a record TV average minute audience for soccer of 3.3 million in this country, which was further augmented by an additional 1.5 million viewers or users that came from out-of-home television, digital media, and radio, mostly through the day, a 46% lift in audience on an average minute basis. And we learned that multi-platform users account for 26% of all users or followers of the World Cup at that time, but they represented nearly half of all the usage or half of all the time spent with that event. We also confirmed that the more platforms used, the more time that was spent with World Cup content. And so it was proof that media use was not a zero-sum game, and that media use was in fact expanding into new markets of time, people using media at new and different times of the day. As I said, we're now consuming a little over 11 hours a day of media. Now, we also confirmed that the basic metrics of media use have not changed and remain effective. Brad alluded to this earlier. I'm glad that he did. And it's actually pretty simple. It's a matter of measuring how many, how often, and how long. How many unique persons watch, visit, and listen to our content, how often they watch, visit, or listen, and how much time they spend visiting or listening. In other words, reach, frequency, and the amount of time that we spent with the content or the ad. The product of how many, how often, and how long is the average minute audience, which represents the rate of usage of any medium. It also represents a standardized measure of audiences at any given time across platforms, a great way to compare the amount of time and where audiences are coming from at any given time, where an ad can run, where a commercial message can run. So our goal is simple: to produce these metrics across our platforms on an ongoing basis as a standard practice and with scale. Now, it needs to be noted that ad measurement across platforms, while still incomplete, has been evolving a little more quickly in the ad performance space, which makes a little bit sense. It's a little bit simpler. We can tag an ad, and we can, in effect, track it. We're not tracking it across all platforms, but we're getting there. So ad measurement and content measurement are on different paths, which is okay in my opinion, but we can't let content measurement across platforms fall further behind. Ad impressions measure what has potentially been seen or heard, but we also need content measures to understand media behavior and to identify new and best opportunities for exposure in the future. So planners can't rely solely on a database over their historical ad impressions to make best decisions on media mix and content selection going forward. There are simply too many blind spots. And the media companies like ESPN need the best available measures of cross-platform usage to understand their audience media behavior and develop sound proposals for integrated media campaign. We're actually in the business right now of advising our clients as to how to use our content because we're the ones with the data. We have to be very careful about that. And we have to be we have to give them the right information, if you will, which is why this data is so important. So what's next for our XP initiative? Our goal is to create a blueprint for the industry, a scalable foundation for cross-platform content measurement that the industry can adopt, build upon, and grow. So just as digital media has enabled rapid growth in media usage, it is now helping us to enable measurement. We believe that a hybrid approach utilizing census-level data that provide timely, granular observations in combination with projectable single-source data sets can be the solution that ends our cross-media marathon. If you were lucky enough to get into the Key Issue Forum during the breakout session on Monday with representatives of my team, ComScore and Arbitron, you may have seen a little bit of this. Project Blueprint is a direct result of the work that CIM, the Coalition for Innovative Media Measurement, had done to incubate innovative ideas for cross-platform measurement. Arbitron had created a single-source solution for video on their personal portable meter, and ComScore did something similar, but using a hybrid approach, integrating data from digital set-top box, TV data with their unified mobile and online measurement solutions. We were impressed with the results of both of these projects. However, neither one alone completely addressed our needs. So we thought, why not combine the core capabilities of both of these companies, utilizing the best methods that came out of these CIM projects? So a hybrid, hierarchical approach that would give us the scale and the detail that we need to go forward. So we asked both companies, and they agreed to collaborate. The project was formally announced in the US last September, and we are about midway into building this first, what we say is a nationally projectable, 5-platform, continuously operating, persons-based, programmer-inclusive, integrated media solution. Now, to give you an idea of how this will work, first, here's how we're going to supply data on each platform. And you'll note in a second that smartphones and tablets are collapsed into one mobile category. So for television, we will be combining set-top box or return path data from ComScore with demographic viewing information coming from Arbitron's personal portable meter. In addition, Arbitron will be providing information on out-of-home television viewing as well from the PPM. Radio will come from the Arbitron PPM, and PC and mobile data will come from ComScore by supplying usage from the unified data measurement technique now called Media Metrics Multi-Platform, combining tagged census data from websites and the data from their PC and mobile panels. So we've got the PPM supplying television and radio data, including demographics from a representative national panel, and then ComScore providing data from the unified data measurement solution, as well as their national set-top box television panel. Now, a critical goal of this effort is to be able to measure duplication across these 5 platforms. In order to do this, the project will first use the best available data sources to measure overlapping reach and usage, solutions that already exist, proceeding in a hierarchical fashion. First, TV and radio duplication will come from 70,000 Arbitron PPM panelists. PC, mobile, and tablet duplication will come from ComScore's Unified Measurement or Media Metrics Multi-Platform, as I mentioned, already in the marketplace today. TV, PC duplication data among ComScore internet set-top box panelists, those set-top box homes that are also ComScore panelists, using the ComScore beacon, duplication between TV and internet will be calculated at the entity level, meaning television networks, programs, websites, et cetera. And then finally, to add mobile and tablets to this duplication, ComScore will identify a subset of TV set-top box and internet panelists who also have a home Wi-Fi network to create a TV, internet, mobile panel, which will ultimately be the source for TV mobile duplication and TV, PC mobile duplication, because we can identify those connected devices through the IP address in that home and connect that to those users. So ultimately, that's what this will look like. The first step is using the best available measures of duplication. Now, ultimately, using this hybrid approach, millions of data points will be collected each and every day, perhaps billions. We'll see when we get started. And will be integrated based on a nationally projectable single source calibration panel. Now, in combination with the pairwise approach that I just discussed, the calibration will inform the full 5-way multi-platform duplication model, which will be adjusted on an ongoing basis to make it nationally representative. I'm happy to report that this critical element of the project has been completed on time with just over 2,000 PPM panelists installed for measuring television and radio, and these same panelists were asked to download ComScore meters on their PC, smartphone, and tablet devices. So this is up and running, we're on time, and this was a major hurdle, a major challenge to get over so that we can move forward and complete the project. So finally, here's how we envision the elements of this project coming together. First, individual platform usage for television, radio, PC, and mobile coming from the PPM, as well as sources from ComScore, including the set-top box panel on a national level. Platform duplication factors will come from the pairwise duplication factors from existing best sources that I talked about, and will be adjusted using the calibration panel. And then all of this will be integrated and adjusted daily in a client interface in a nice, neat package, we hope. So phase 1 of this project is expected to be completed by early summer. It will report ESPN-specific ESPN content multi-platform data at the entity level and total national multi-platform data for the broadcast months of April, May, and June. So we will have general data about how Americans are using this content to share with the industry. And our plan is to share these data with the industry by the June ARF AM 8.0 conference, and we look forward to that. So our hope is that the informed view of how Americans interact with these devices will change from this to this, a little bit more about reality. And of course, these overlapping circles will vary a lot depending on the time, the day, the week, and the audiences that we track. So thank you for your time. I'm excited about this project. I'm excited about the prospects that we've made. I'm excited about the implications for the entire industry, and we need your help. We can't sustain this alone. My credit card is all tapped out. I also want to thank Arbitron and ComScore for their unprecedented collaboration and dedicated to this effort, and my own team at ESPN. We're on schedule and look forward to sharing results in the next few months. Thank you very much.